this closing argument in Washington. Let's listen in.
America, we know what Donald Trump has in mind. More chaos, more division, and policies that help those at the very top and hurt everyone else. I offer a different path, and I ask for your vote. And here is my pledge to you. I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to make your life better. I am not looking to score political points. I am looking to make progress. I pledge to listen to experts, to those who will be impacted by the decisions I make, and to people who disagree with me. Unlike Donald Trump, I don't believe people who disagree with me are the enemy. He wants to put them in jail. I'll give them a seat at the table. I pledge to you to approach my work with the joy and optimism that comes from making a difference in people's lives. And I pledge to be a president for all Americans. And to always put country above party and self. I love our country with all my heart. And I believe in its promise because I've lived it. I grew up as a child of the Civil Rights Movement. My parents would take me to marches in a stroller, where crowds of people of all races, faiths, and walks of life came together to fight for the ideals of freedom and opportunity. I've lived the promise of America. I saw how hard our mother worked to give her daughters the same chances this country gave her. Growing up, I was blessed to have family by blood and family by love, who instilled in me the values of community, compassion, and faith that have always defined our nation at its best. I've lived the promise of America. I've spent my life fighting for the people who have been hurt and counted out, but never stopped believing that in our country, anything is possible. I've lived the promise of America, and I see the promise of America in all of you. In all of you. I see it. I see it in the young people who are voting for the first time, who are determined to live free from gun violence and to protect our planet and to shape the world they inherit. I see it in the women who refuse to accept a future without reproductive freedom. Support them. I see it in Republicans who have never voted for a Democrat before, but have put the Constitution of the United States over party. I've seen it in Americans different in many respects, but united in our pursuit of freedom, our belief in fairness and decency, and our faith in a better future. America, I know the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. I know it. And that's why I am in this race, to fight for the people, just like I always have. Nearly 250 years ago, America was born when we wrested freedom from a petty tyrant. Across the generations, Americans have preserved that freedom, expanded it, and in so doing, proved to the world that a government of, by, and for the people is strong and can endure. And those who came before us, the patriots at Normandy and Selma, Seneca Falls and Stonewall, on farmlands factory floors. They did not struggle, sacrifice, and lay down their lives only to see us cede our fundamental freedoms. They didn't do that only to see us submit to the will of another petty tyrant. These United States of America, we are not a vessel for the schemes of wannabe dictators. The United States of America is the greatest idea humanity ever devised. A nation big enough to encompass all our dreams, strong enough to withstand any fracture or fissure between us, and fearless enough to imagine a future of possibilities. So, America, let us reach for that future. Let us fight for this beautiful country we love. And in 7 days, we have the power, each of you has the power to turn the page and start writing the next chapter in the most extraordinary story ever told. I thank you all. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
So you just heard from Kamala Harris making a pretty dark and tedious final pitch to voters just 1 week before Election Day. The Harris campaign looks a lot different than it did this summer.
And understand, in this fight, as Tim Walz likes to point out, we are joyful warriors. Joyful warriors. Should never again stand behind the field of the President of the United States of America. Never again. Never again. Never again.
That joy must have left its luggage in Chicago, because now that we're in the home stretch, Kamala's missing something.
It does suggest that your momentum has slowed. Do you feel like the race is slipping away?
I do not. And actually, and I agree with you. I think certainly polling is a measure, but to be frank, if I'd listened to polls, I would have never run for my first or second office. I wouldn't be here talking with you. And what I am seeing are in states such as South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, historic turnout. Historic turnout.
Yeah, historic Republican turnout. Republicans are winning the early vote in North Carolina and Georgia for the first time in history. Trump's inner circle telling Axios, we've never had data that looks this good. Trump's confident, and Harris claiming she's confident, but has a lot of problems. When she said she wouldn't do anything differently than Biden, she really meant it, because she's even campaigning like Biden. We're starting to realize the Joy campaign, people were just joyful she wasn't Joe. Her closing message was Joe's message. Trump's a dictator. That message wasn't working for Joe. That's why he got whacked. But for some reason, they think it's working for Kamala. Kamala's aides are increasingly hopeful that the campaign's attempts to cast Trump as a fascist will carry Ms. Harris to a narrow triumph. Everything in the country is more dangerous, disorganized, and expensive. And Kamala Harris claims she's running on the future, but can't stop talking about a European dictator who's been dead for 80 years. Kamala talks about Hitler more than a history professor. She says she's the candidate of change, and she's giving her closing speech in Washington, D.C., at the Ellipse, the site of Trump's Jan 6 speech. A week before the election, and Kamala isn't in the battlegrounds, she's in D.C. talking about January 6th. And even though she's giving the speech right in front of the White House, Biden's not invited.
Mr. President, will you be watching the Vice President's speech tonight?
I will.
Why are you not attending? It's right there on the ellipse.
Because it's for her. This is her night.
What do you expect to hear out of her tonight? What's the closing message from the Vice President?
I'll let you hear it first.
If you can squint, you can see Biden poking his head out of the window of the White House, but the nurses won't let him leave. And he couldn't come anyway because Kamala took out a restraining order on him. Biden's not allowed within 100 yards of the vice president. Every time they're seen together, she loses votes. And tonight's speech isn't helping.
Donald Trump has told us his priorities for a second term. He has an enemies list of people he intends to prosecute. Donald Trump intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him. People he calls, quote, the enemy from within.
Every politician has an enemies list. The only difference is that Trump hasn't prosecuted anybody on his. Biden and Harris have an enemies list. Yeah. And they've prosecuted Trump, Bannon, Navarro, Rudy, Weiselberg. I could go on for an hour with the amount of Republicans they locked up. Biden, just last week, while he was campaigning for Harris, said we have to lock Trump up. Trump's running for president to stay out of prison because he's on Biden and Harris's enemies list. He's literally running against the prosecutor. But here she is giving herself a nice makeover.
Here is my pledge to you. I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to make your life better. I am not looking to score political points. I am looking to make progress. I pledge to listen to experts, to those who will be impacted by the decisions I make.
Kamala Harris was the most radical left senator in the entire Senate. She reached across the aisle? Never. She never even did anything in the Senate. What legislation did she get passed? Nothing. Kamala's seeking common sense solutions. What is she talking about? She opened the border, emptied the prisons, broke the bank, and put boys in girls' locker rooms. Here's a common sense solution to stop inflation. Stop spending so much money. She's campaigning on spending even more money. She's running on solving the problems she created and couldn't solve while she had the power. And what experts is Kamala going to listen to? The experts who said shut the schools down for 2 years? Or the ones who said if we get vaxxed, we can't catch or spread COVID? Biden promised unity too. And all he did was unify the country against them. Trump saw Kamala's speech coming from a mile away. It's nothing new.
Today we're going to talk about the real character of Kamala and a person who has no remorse for the anguish she's inflicted upon families all across America. On the contrary, I have to tell you, Kamala intends to conflict and keep this misery going, and she's going to keep it going as long as she can, because that's the only way she can get elected. She's going out and only criticizing, talking about Hitler and Nazi, and because her record's horrible. Her borders are the worst in the history of the world. Millions of Americans are lying awake at night, worried about how they'll pay their bills because Kamala wrecked their family finances.
Democrats are secretly agreeing with Trump that Kamala's fascist attacks are backfiring because American voters want to hear about the future. Democrats are asking, we're going to shame people rather than give people a reason to get people off their couches to vote? I don't see us moving anyone over with that message. It's risky to go negative because sometimes independents don't like negativity, is what Democrats in Michigan are mumbling. Local anchors from Michigan are asking Kamala about the issues Kamala refuses to mention.
What's your message to Michigan voters in terms of the economy? We have auto workers who are being laid off and those who fear that they might be laid off. The average person can't afford groceries or their rent. And recent polls in Michigan show that Michigan voters believe that Donald Trump would do a better job with handling the economy and bringing jobs back. What do you say to that?
Well, let's start with this. I come from the middle class, and I'll never forget where I come from. My mother worked very hard. She, by the time I was a teenager, was able to save up for our first home. And I understand.
Kamala hasn't put any thought into you or what you're going to do with all the problems she heaped on you, because she spends every waking hour thinking about one man, not Doug, Donald. She played the YMCA before she took the stage tonight. Now, if you were running against Hitler, would you be trolling him and blasting his playlist? She's silly. The fascist closing message isn't designed to win. It's designed to justify their resistance if they lose. Opposing a so-called fascist in the White House gives the left a license to do whatever it wants. Lie, cheat, steal, riot, investigate, impeach, maybe even something worse. And they can frame every exercise of presidential authority as a fascist takeover. Trump fires someone, which he has every right to do. He's a dangerous tyrant who must be stopped. Trump starts deporting illegals, which is what the country wants. Internment camps. And AOC starts crying and scratching ICE agents' eyes out in front of the cameras. Trump's Justice Department opens an investigation into shady Democrat campaign fundraising, suspicious ballot harvesting, insider trading. See, he's locking up his political enemies just like we warned. Any executive order Trump signs, just like all the presidents before him, it's going to be seen through the prism of a savage king abusing his power and destroying democracy. The dictator on day one hoax is their insurance policy, just like Russia was. So if they lose, they have an excuse to investigate and decapitate his presidency. This isn't even a well thought out strategy. The Kamala campaign is just listening to what they see on MSNBC. Even Bill Clinton, the Bernie bros, their own super PAC. They're like, Madam Vice President, you might want to focus on the American people and how you're going to make their lives better instead of blowing off steam about a blonde billionaire. If Trump wins with a diverse coalition and even wins the popular vote, he has a broad governing mandate. And this gives Democrats a reason to resist the will of the people. So this isn't over on Election Day. It'll only be the beginning. Let's bring in Executive VP of the Trump Organization, Eric Trump. So you just heard some of Kamala Harris's speech. I'm sorry to inflict that upon you, Eric. You're probably not going to sleep tonight. How do you think she's finishing this race?
Well, Jesse, I want to give you the first sentence and the last sentence of the speech because I thought it was very telling. The first sentence was, it doesn't have to be this way. The last sentence is, we have the power to turn the page. Guess who's sitting in the White House right now? It's not Donald Trump. Guess who's been sitting in the White House for the last, 12 of the last 16 years, Jesse? It's Democrats, right? She didn't give one substantive policy. She can't. All she can do is go out there and say Donald Trump's a bad man. He's not a good man. He's a this, he's a that. He's a very good man. Let me start there. But, she's talking, well, I would like to fix housing prices. Kamala, you caused it. You let 20 million illegal immigrants into this country. I mean, this is basic supply and demand that a 5-year-old child would understand. If you allow 20 million illegal immigrants into the country, you're probably going to create a housing crisis. When you spend literally trillions of dollars in waste, you're probably going to create inflation. When you decide to kill all oil and gas drilling and do a war on fossil fuels, you're probably going to cause energy prices to skyrocket. It's what's made this country unaffordable. Why didn't you fix these problems? And we've all been asking that literally for the last 3 months, but you go out there, you're campaigning every single day. I'm going to fix the problems. I'm going to fix them. Where have you been, Jesse? I mean, you know the White House very well. You've been there a bunch of times. I know it extremely well. Kamala's office is about 4 feet away from Joe Biden's office. Why haven't you fixed these problems? Why haven't you fixed the fentanyl problem in this country that's killing so many kids? 320,000 a year to be exact. Why haven't you fixed the cost of food? Why haven't you fixed inflation? Why haven't you stopped the wars, Ukraine? Why have we given $200 billion, to fund that effort so young kids can shoot each other in trenches? Why haven't we invested in Detroit and in Philadelphia and in Wisconsin and so many other states? Why? Why did FEMA run out of money? Why was the government nowhere to be found? She can't answer these questions, so the only thing she reverts to is, oh, Donald Trump's bad, and we're gonna turn the page. You've been there for 4 years. I agree. We should absolutely turn the page on the absolute dumpster fire that has been this administration that's embarrassed us in front of the entire world.
So, yeah, she's running on your dad's a dictator, and she's going to be a problem solver. No one's buying that. So you've gone now, your family and your campaign, you hit up Rogan, MSG, and Mickey D's, and you're going to be with Brett Favre in Wisconsin in a couple days. How are you looking at this election and the momentum? Are you looking to expand the map? Where are you drawing the lines here?
Yeah, well, definitely expand the map. My father's going to be in Virginia. He's going to be in Albuquerque, New Mexico, right? Again, traditionally states you wouldn't, really go to. You look at early vote numbers in New Jersey, that has to be scaring the Democrats in a major way. Republicans are actually winning the early vote in New Jersey right now. My father asked Republicans to do one thing: get out and vote early. Vote early, vote early. And they've done exactly that. They've gone to the polls in record numbers. And listen, Jesse, it's very simple. People want to see American greatness back again. My father has a simple message. Let's make America great again. Let's be number one at everything we do in the world. Let's have the greatest economy in the world. Let's have the greatest military. Let's not fight senseless wars. Let's not have 10% inflation. Let businesses thrive. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. Give people a chance to succeed. Let the American dream, flourish in this country. Regain respect. Don't get used. Don't lose our manufacturing all over the world, right? That's what my father stands for. Peace, security, American strength, great economy, family values, Constitution, faith. What did she say she stood for there? Have 10% inflation. Let businesses thrive. no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. Give people a chance to succeed. Let the American dream, flourish in this country. Regain respect. Don't get used. Don't lose our manufacturing all over the world, right? I mean, that's what my father stands for. Peace, security, American strength, great economy, family values, Constitution, faith. What did she say she stood for there? American strength, great economy, family values, Constitution, faith. What did she say she stood for there? Use Constitution, faith. What did she say she stood for there? Family values, Constitution, faith. What did she say she stood for there?
And the people say she's an empty suit. It's worse than that. She's actually a costume. She's wearing a costume. She's trying to be something that she's not. And you said well earlier, her record. She had the most liberal voting record of the modern era in the U.S. Senate. She is a San Francisco radical. So the empty campaign rhetoric is just not working. The people aren't buying it, and they're on our side. We're going to grow the House majority. We are going to take back the Senate, and Donald J. Trump is going back to the White House. That's what's going to happen.
It might not work to win the election, but if they lose the election, they're going to fall back on fascism. They're going to say Donald Trump's a dictator, and that who knows what kind of harebrained resistance schemes they're going to cook up this time. They threw the kitchen sink at him last time. What do you expect?
Well, look, they've shown what they're worth and what they'll do. They'll engage in lawfare. They'll attack him personally. They'll take down the institutions of this country if it fits their agenda. I think you're going to have resistance. I wish none of that was true. I wish that we could unify as a country and move forward and fix everything that's broken. They've broken everything. I keep telling President Trump that
You're so fortunate to stay in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I'll tell you the first agenda item immediately upon President Trump taking the oath, we secure the border. That's the #1 issue of the American people for all the reasons we know. Congress will come right behind that with legislation to fix it, and we will turn immediately to the economy. The cost of living is destroying the finances of all these American families, and we know how to do it. This is not theoretical. We did this already. The first Trump administration delivered the greatest economy in the history of the world because we implemented the policies and the principles that we all believe in. We will extend the Trump-era tax cuts and make sure they don't expire and put the largest tax burden in history on the American people all at once. And then we will take a blowtorch to the regulatory state, Jesse. We are going to get the agencies off the backs of job creators and entrepreneurs and risk takers to the people all at once. And then we will take a blowtorch to the regulatory state, Jesse. We are going to get the agencies off the backs of job creators and entrepreneurs and risk takers to institute and bring about a pro-growth economy again. Eric mentioned earlier the energy policy. That is a key component to this. It's important not only to our economy, but to our national security as well. We're going to do the opposite of everything that Joe and Kamala have done. The American people know that, and that's why we're going to win this thing and turn this country around.
All right, Speaker. Good to hear from you. The clock is ticking. We'll see how it shakes out. Close race. We'll follow it. Thank you. Fox News alert, Donald Trump holding a rally in Allentown, PA. Let's listen in.
Allowed us to be invaded. We were invaded. This was a massive invasion of criminals. She has violated her oath, eradicated our sovereign border, and unleashed an army of migrant gangs who are waging a campaign of violence and terror against insane asylums and mental institutions from all around the world, from Venezuela to the Congo. Oh, the Congo. They're supplying lots. They're taking them out of their jails. They're opening up their jails, and they're busing them. They can't get enough buses, frankly. They're supplying lots. They're taking them out of their jails. They're opening up their jails, and they're busing them. They can't get enough buses, frankly, because I'm shocked. Venezuela is only about 60% empty. Do you know that Venezuelan crime is down 72%? You know why? Because it's like, I said this, the press gave me a hard time on this one. They said it was very, I don't think it's disrespectful. It's like we're a giant garbage can. That's what they treat us like. And these are killers. These are drug dealers. These are gangs, gang members. These are some of the worst people. These are terrorists. Treat us like. And these are killers. These are drug dealers. These are gangs, gang members. These are some of the worst people. These are terrorists. And they're treating us and dumping. They're dumping like we're a dumping ground. And it includes savage criminals who assault, rape, and murder our women and our girls. And then they say, oh, my people said, sir, please don't say that. What? You're going to protect the women. It sounds very like, I said, well, don't they want protection? I think they want protection. No, don't. Sure, it doesn't sound good. Doesn't sound good. I'm going to protect our women from criminals coming into our country, going up to the suburbs and doing really bad things. We're going to protect our men, our women, our children. We're going to protect our country. 100% protect our country. But they said it sounds terrible. It sounds so terrible when you say they can take care of themselves. So no. When you see MS-13 coming through your front door, you're not taking care of yourself. And your husband's not going to take care of you too good either, believe me. And she wants to take your guns away. We're not taking your guns away. Ever. Are there any women in this giant, massive arena that do not want protection? Please raise your hand. Do women want to be protected? Anyone who would let monsters kidnap and kill our children does not belong anywhere near the Oval Office. Doesn't belong. Today, I want America to hear directly from a mother whose world has been shattered forever by Kamala. This is difficult to watch. I had a group of people watching it. It's a difficult thing to watch, but this is what's happening in our country.
So this race is as tight as it gets, especially Pennsylvania. And with just a week until the election, Democrats are sweating. When Democrats get nervous, they start yapping. In 2016, they threatened to move out of the country if Trump won. We would have paid for their plane tickets, but no one wanted to leave. 8 years later, they're playing the victim again. But this time they say they can't leave because Trump's going to put them in jail.
He wants to ban Muslims. He wants to deport Muslims. And he's talked internment camps. You know what, Jake? You may have to visit me in one. I get worried enough when he talks about what he's going to do to his political enemies.
Jake's not visiting Dingell in a camp. Sorry, but Debbie's not important enough to arrest. But these people are serious. Here's a Clinton press flack who thinks Trump's going to put him in prison.
I've been sued once in my life, and it was by Donald Trump. And, you know, there are people, I mean, you're a journalist. You and I might be sharing a cell in 6 months from now. And, but people laugh it off. It's not funny.
Why would he go to prison? Did he go to an island with Bill? Nah. This is all completely made up. They know the prison camp hoax won't work. So they kicked it up a notch. It's now the put you to death hoax.
The stakes literally are life and death for every woman in America. It's not hyperbole. It's not an exaggeration. It's what happens next week.
Libs are so dramatic, they're choking up on The View. Watch.
Nobody gets a pass on insulting veterans and saying those who died for our country are suckers and losers. From the bottom of my heart, as a daughter of refugees who came here escaping war, came here for America to be a part of a democracy, to be a part of building something beautiful where they could be free. I'm telling you, the good news is that I believe women will be the beacon in this election.
Mika on The View. That's the mashup nobody asked for. Trump's the guy who got raided, arrested, and shot, but the journalists who encouraged it, they claim they're the real victims. If it were up to the left, he'd be dead.
It makes me so angry that we're here talking about.
He'd be dead.
It makes me so angry that we're here talking about a piece of like Donald Trump. Let him die in a jail cell.
Let the piece of ish die in a jail cell, is what Democrats are telling voters as they head to the polls. Democrats are acting out because no one's paying attention to them. Celebrity endorsements falling flat, hoaxes aren't getting traction, and the liberal media ratings, they are in the basement. So they're playing the victim. Because for Democrats, the bigger the victim, the higher the status. They're begging Trump to arrest them so they can be political prisoners, snag a book deal, get on TV. They all want to be like Michael Cohen. These people have a martyr fetish. Forget about hard work and talent getting you ahead. Getting locked up by Trump puts you at the top of the Democrat victim totem pole. They saw Trump grow stronger when they put him on trial. Now they all want their own trials, and they want their networks to cover them. That says more about them than it does about him. Gad Saad's a visiting professor and global ambassador at Northwood University and author of On Trial.
Right. So a thermostat in your hotel room is a homeostatic system. You set the temperature where you want it, and then depending on the temperature in the room, it either heats it up or cools it. Well, I argue that there's something called the homeostasis of victimology. They have to have a certain victimology level that they set the thermostat at. And if they don't reach that set level, they manufacture all kinds of faux victimology narrative to reach that thermostat level. And it's very offensive because I escaped Lebanon because we were going to be executed any second. So imagine real victims, how they feel when they hear these faux victims engaging in emotional hysteria. It pisses me off.
I mean, these people have great contracts. They get driven by a chauffeur.
How they feel when they hear these faux victims engaging in emotional hysteria. It pisses me off.
I mean, these people have great contracts. They get driven by a chauffeur to work every day in air conditioning. Why do liberals mostly, why do they want to be victimized or at least seen as victims?
Because as you said, it's victimology poker, right? It's no longer about me being the best at something. The one who has the most compelling victimhood story is the one that wins in the current zeitgeist. It's grotesque. By the way, all of their emotional hysteria reminds me of a neurological disorder. If you saw the Joker when he laughs in uncontrollable ways, this is actually called pseudo-bulbar affect or emotional incontinence. And so that's exactly what they're doing. They are acting in a hysterical way at wrong moments. In the same way that the Joker laughs hysterically in wrong moments, you get the cackler, you get the emotional hysteria. They are lobotomized, albeit to be lobotomized, you should have a brain. Most of them are brainless.
So they've lost a little touch with reality. They're definitely not grounded, and they like having a story to tell about a struggle where they were victimized and they somehow overcome it. Is that because their life in reality isn't that interesting or compelling? Why is that?
I mean, it could be that, but it's also, as we said earlier, that somehow our brains have been parasitized in the West to believe that without a victimhood story, then you're not worthy to listen to. And so therefore they right, the Jussie Smollett and all the rest of those guys, that's exactly what they're doing. And again, it's offensive to those who came to the West because they truly suffered, right? We were going to be executed as Lebanese Jews. So imagine when I see Mika engaging in all this faux victimhood, when I compare it to the real victimhood that I had in my childhood. It's grotesque, it's offensive, and hopefully next Tuesday the right. Thank you, sir.
Kamala almost lost her hand.
Bao nhiêu không